Okay, our next system is the circulatory system. The circulatory system basically functions in facilitating exchange through the body. A lot of other systems and organs use the circulatory system as like a network or a highway or a um, passageway to exchange things throughout, like in the gas exchange that we looked at in the last chapter is transported through here. Also, the digestive system we looked at, the nutrients and vitamins and things are transported in the circulatory system. So it's a very important system to kind of tie the other systems and provide transport for the other systems, transport to cells that need things. Um, so the circulatory system provides that function of transport, and it has a pump to um, move things through the system. Now we have a we have a pump and vessels that the blood flows in, and so that's the fluid medium inside the vessels is the blood. We'll look at its components in a bit, but and we're going to look at some different types of systems, just like our other systems we've looked at. There's variation of this system as we look around the animal kingdom. There are some animals, some simple invertebrate animals that carry out this exchange without a full circulatory system. So they can exchange things basically just through their gastrovascular cavity. So they don't have a series of vessels that are used to pump things around. So we see a few invertebrate animals, but even most invertebrates have some level of a circulatory system that has some form of a heart, blood vessels, and then inside it blood. So that's the three main components of the circulatory system. The first thing we start out with in our outline is talking about the main two types of circulatory systems. We have what's called an open system and a closed system. So a number of invertebrates have what's called an open system, and that is meaning that the blood is just pumped out into an open cavity in the animal's body. So this is a grasshopper, and it shows that open system right here, where we have some blood vessels here, and we have some small little hearts. There's small muscular hearts that are used to pump blood, and the blood is just pumped directly into the open body cavity. And that's where it is either going to distribute nutrients or gases or whatever it's doing, and then the heart will absorb through little pores, or the blood vessels through little pores will absorb that back in to the tube system. So the tube system is up here on the dorsal portion of the grasshopper, and you have blood being dumped out and then absorbed back in through these pores. So that's an open system where the blood or hemolymph is just dumped directly into the body. The other category is like what we have, and it's called a closed system. We see that in other animals. Here's a fish here, and it has a closed system. Now, this is where closed means that the blood is enclosed in vessels the entire time. It's not just dumped out into the body. So we have a pump here. We have a two chambered heart, and it pumps the blood to the gills where it picks up oxygen, and it goes and dumps that oxygen off, and then it comes back to the heart. So this is kind of a little diagram or schematic about how that works. So in fish that have a two-chambered heart, the blood at the heart is always non-oxygenated. So again, we have our blue representing vessels containing blood that does not have oxygen, red containing vessels that have blood that has oxygen. All right. So in this is called a single circuit system, and it has two valves in the heart. So that's a closed system. So it is enclosed, and we see all vertebrates have this closed system, and also some invertebrates have a closed system as well. Okay. Now we have different variations on these open and closed system, and the heart structures differ. So let's look. We're going to look at some of these differences. All right, here is what we just looked at with the fish. So you see the diagram here, and this is again has a heart with two valves, two chambers here. It has an atrium and a ventricle. So those are the names that we use for the chambers in the various types of circulatory systems. So we have atrium is where the blood always goes to first, and then it moves into a ventricle. So again, chambers of the heart. Atrium first, blood receives the blood, ventricle pumps it out. So this is going to go to the gills where it picks up oxygen, and then it comes back to goes straight to the systemic cells. The capillary bed dumps out this oxygen, and then it comes back to the heart. So again, we see this two-chambered heart in fish, a single circuit. So one path that it leaves and comes back on. So that's a single circuit. Then we have a variation. Then we have variations where we see 4 chambers in the heart. This is like what we have, where we have 4 chambers. We have 2 atriums and 2 ventricles, and we have 2 circuits. So one of the circuit goes to the lungs and picks up oxygen, and then it comes back to the heart, and then from the heart, then it's pumped back to systemic cells in the body where it dumps that oxygen off, and then it comes back to the right side of the heart and comes to the atrium of the right side, then to the ventricle of the right side, and so forth. So we have a right and left atrium and a right and left ventricle. So we call that a 4-chambered heart, 2 circuits. Pulmonary for going to the lungs, and then our systemic circuit for going and dumping oxygen out. We see we see a third variation on this. So we have our single circuit, 2-chambered heart. We have our 2-circuit, 4-chambered heart, and then in amphibians we see something unique where the ventricles are fused. So if you look right here where I'm pointing with the arrow here, if you look right there, I'm about to flip the slide, and you can see the only difference between this and between ours and the amphibians is the merging of the ventricles. So if you look, let's see if there it is. Okay. So here we have a merging of the ventricles right here. And so we have a merging of that oxygenated and non-oxygenated blood. But when it's pumped out, only the oxygenated blood again goes to the systemic cells, and then only the non-oxygenated blood goes to the lungs. And in this, it's called pulmocutaneous. Cutaneous is referring to the skin. So again, these are those that can perform that integumentary exchange we talked about in the other chapter of exchanging these gases through their skin. So, but still 2 circuits, but 3 chambers. So it just has 1 large ventricle and 2 atriums. So that's a variation we see in amphibians. There's also some turtles, snakes, lizards that have this as well, this 3-chambered variation. All right, so those are the variations on kind of the schematic of the layout. The other thing is we're going to look at the heart. Has 2 chambers. It has an atrium and a ventricle. This shows the human heart, of the mammalian heart, and how it's laid together with the right and left ventricles down here on the lower, and then right above that is right and left atriums. Let's see. There's atria that are thin-walled structures that pump the blood from the atrium to the ventricles. So that's the basic layout of the heart. Now the heart pumps the blood, and it pumps the blood through a series of vessels. The vessels there's really 5 different types of vessels that we have in our circulatory system, and they're grouped based on their size. So we have some large vessels, medium-sized, and small vessels. The large vessels, we have 2 different types of large vessels, and they're about the same size, but the only difference is one of these carries oxygenated blood, one carries non-oxygenated blood, and that is our arteries and our veins. These are very thick. They actually have muscle walls in them. So arteries and veins. The next level is a medium-sized vessel that, again, there's 2 of them. One carries oxygenated blood, one carries non-oxygenated blood. The oxygenated blood, medium-sized vessels, the arterial. The non-oxygenated blood, medium-sized vessels, the venule. And then we have one that has very small, thin walls, and that's the capillaries. These play a very important role in our body because this is the only vessel that really stuff can go in and out of. So this is how stuff gets in and out of our bloodstream. It's the capillaries. It's the only one where the wall of it is thin enough for stuff to come in and out. So very important design. These line our alveoli in our lungs so we can get oxygen in. They line the intestines so we can get nutrients in, things like that. So important structure there is that thin wall of the capillaries. Let's see. Okay, so another structure within the veins, we have these valves that keep blood flowing in one way. So we have valves. Here's one that's closed. Here's one that's open. So as the heart pumps, it is going to pump, and it tends to want to pull that blood back, but these valves will keep that blood flowing in one direction. Okay. A couple more things to mention. We've mentioned the heart, the vessels that the blood flows in. Now we will mention the blood itself. The blood's made up of 2 components. We have plasma and we have our cellular components. The plasma is just water, and basically with stuff absorbed in it. So here's a centrifuge sample of blood here. Centrifuge is when you spin the test tube real fast in a device, and then the heavier objects go to one end, which are the cellular components. The plasma stays near the top. So your blood's about half and half. Half plasma, half cells. The plasma has all this stuff in it that we've talked about being transported in the blood, the nutrients, hormones, gases, all these type things. So very important is the plasma. The cellular component that makes up the other half is made up of really 3 different kinds of cells. We have our red blood cells that make most of our cellular blood, and then we have white blood cells and platelets. Both of these play important roles. White blood cells we'll get into. We mentioned them here in the outline. Monocytes and neutrophil destroy bacteria. The lymphocytes fight diseases. Eosinophils kill parasites, and basophils inhibit blood clotting. All these play an immune function in our blood, and the platelets play a clotting function in our blood. So here's an example of some platelets in a blood vessel. So this is looking right down the middle of a blood vessel, and if we have an injury to that vessel, the red blood cells would just flow through it, but the platelets tend to get clogged up right there. And so that's an important function of these is for blood clotting, or the platelets. So those are some different functions of the platelets. Those are our 3 cellular components: our white blood cells, platelets, and red blood cells. We'll talk about the white blood cells in our next chapter, the immune system, in more detail. And that's where we end for our lecture on the circulatory system.